What kind of collision will occur when the brain of a baby is implanted into the body of an adult woman? A pregnant woman, desperate with life, leaps from a bridge. Her body is discovered by an anatomical freak, Godwin. Godwin notices that although the woman's pulse has stopped, her muscles haven't stiffened, and the fetus inside her still shows signs of life. Considering the woman's suicide was to escape a painful life, Godwin has a sudden idea. He transplants the fetus's brain into the woman's head. After a strong electrical stimulation, the woman slowly opens her eyes. Godwin names the revived woman Belle and treats her like a daughter. He makes bubbles to entertain her while eating, and tells stories to lull her to sleep. Like all children, Belle enjoys causing destruction to explore the world. Godwin allows Belle to explore freely, like an old father would. Godwin introduces guests to Belle, but Belle immediately punches one of them. Godwin doesn't scold her. Instead, he takes the opportunity to teach her words. The young man who was punched is Max, who comes to assist Godwin, helping him observe and record everything about Belle. But Godwin doesn't tell Max the truth about Belle. Instead, he lies, claiming Belle suffered brain damage, so her mind and body are out of sync. Their task is to cure her. Max takes the job seriously and records everything meticulously. From the moment Belle wakes up each day, he notices that Belle is growing rapidly, learning 15 new words a day and her hair growing an inch every 2 days. When Belle sees Godwin dissecting a human body, she wants to participate. Godwin doesn't refuse, but tells Belle that only the dead are allowed to be cut. One day, Max notices a stitch mark on Belle's neck, comparing it with the animals that have been stitched and modified at home. His curiosity about Belle's origins grows. Godwin tells him that this is not something he should inquire about. Belle also grows curious about her origins. Hearing people say that Godwin isn't her real father, Godwin lies, telling Belle that she's an orphan, and that her parents died in an expedition. As a friend of their family, he adopted her. The fabricated story about her origins makes Belle more curious about the outside world. Belle runs into Godwin's laboratory, yelling that she wants to go out and play, but Godwin firmly refuses. Facing Godwin's refusal, Belle resorts to childlike tactics. Unable to win, Godwin finally agrees to take her outside. Belle is ecstatic the first time she steps into the outside world. However, as soon as someone approaches, Godwin stands up immediately. On their way home, Belle is attracted by an ice cream truck. After being denied, Belle instinctively becomes furious, and just as she is about to lose control, Godwin quickly covers her with a white cloth to knock her out. Godwin's strange behavior makes Max even more curious about Belle's origins. He sneaks into Godwin's office, and deep in a drawer, he finds Belle's experimental records. From the documents, Max begins to suspect the truth. Just then, Godwin enters the room. Unable to hide any longer, Godwin tells Max everything about Belle. Max is shocked but still chooses to continue assisting Godwin. When Belle wakes up, she unexpectedly unlocks a secret about her body. She excitedly tells the maid and even offers to let the maid try it too, which angers the maid to the point of almost exploding. At this point, Max enters and, feeling embarrassed by Belle's outrageous behavior, quickly stops her, telling her that in polite society, she can't act that way. The happiness is once again taken away. Belle gets angry and deliberately breaks her plate during dinner, stubbornly turning to leave. While Belle is gone, Godwin makes a request to Max. He wants Max to marry Belle. Firstly, Godwin notices that Max looks at Belle with love. Secondly, he wants to use this to control Max. Max admits his feelings for Belle, then goes to confess to Belle. Belle, clueless, agrees and invites Max to explore their bodies together. Max, being an upright man, believes that having relations before marriage would be disrespectful to Belle. Godwin has another condition for the engagement: they must live with him after the marriage. To be on the safe side, he drafts a legal agreement. This strange arrangement leaves Duncan, who is witnessing, somewhat stunned. Taking advantage of a bathroom break, Duncan sneaks into Belle's room. At this moment, Belle is sitting in a cabinet, blowing bubbles. After a conversation, Duncan realizes that Belle is a naive girl who can be easily tricked. He returns that night. Duncan convinces Belle, saying, "I am a captive and I plan to rescue you." He says he is going on a trip and invites Belle to come along. Belle happily agrees, excitedly running to tell Godwin. Godwin tells Belle, "You are already promised to Max. If you want to travel, we can all go together." When Godwin rejects her again, Belle declares that if she can't go, she will be filled with hatred. Seeing that Belle is determined, Godwin finally compromises. Just then, her fiancé arrives to stop her, telling Belle that Duncan is a playboy. But Belle says she doesn't care and assures Max that they will marry once they return from the trip. She gives Max a passionate kiss. Then, like Godwin, knocks him out using a trick. Before leaving, Godwin sews a wad of money into Belle's dress and kisses her goodbye. When Max is awakened by the experimental subject, Belle has already run off. After running away, Belle experiences her first oyster and first champagne, followed by repeated pleasures of the body. Duncan is a playboy, only interested in enjoying himself and not willing to take responsibility for Belle. He makes it clear that he has no loyalty and only loves adventure. Belle nods, not surprised, while Duncan sleeps soundly. Belle sneaks out alone. Earlier, she had tasted delicious soda, but Duncan only allowed her one. Now, she plans to eat as many as she wants. Next, she sees a cable car in the sky for the first time, hears a passionate performance from a street singer, and witnesses a quarrel between a man and a woman. For Belle, everything is so new and fascinating. The only downside is that, after eating too many sodas, she vomits. When Duncan wakes up, he thinks Belle left without a word because of what he said, but when he hears footsteps, he quickly pretends to be calm and inquires, only to find that Belle was just out exploring. Duncan takes Belle to a dinner with friends. When she dislikes the food, she immediately spits it out, embarrassing Duncan. At this point, a baby in the nearby area starts crying incessantly. Belle stands up to teach the baby a lesson, but Duncan angrily stops her. Though Belle's mind is still immature, she senses the disrespect in Duncan's words and responds on the spot. Back at the dinner table, Belle took Duncan's advice to heart, and Duncan felt pleased by her obedience. In the days that followed, Belle often went out alone to explore the world. She tried spicy strong alcohol, enjoying herself until she drank herself into a stupor. Belle's defiance was giving Duncan a headache. He finally realized that Belle was not a docile lamb to be controlled, but rather a wild stallion, and the more she resisted, the more obsessed he became. When ordering food, Belle unabashedly pointed out what she liked. The music in the restaurant started, and Belle stood up, lost in the rhythm, instinctively dancing to the tune. Duncan, who lived in the moment, followed Belle's steps, excitedly dancing along with her. The lively and unpredictable Belle continued to fascinate him. During the break, Belle kept blinking, which struck Duncan as odd. Belle explained that the man had winked at her, so out of courtesy, she responded in kind. Feeling threatened, Duncan angrily stood up and started to fight with the man. At that moment, a couple invited Belle to join them for dancing in the city. Belle, who had never been, eagerly accepted the invitation. Duncan watched as Belle threw herself at the man, his desire to control her making Belle angry. He hoped to sleep off his frustrations, but when he noticed other people's marks on Belle's legs, he stormed out of the room, banging his head against the bar and crying in frustration. Belle couldn't understand Duncan's complicated emotions, so she awkwardly patted his back, trying to comfort him. To make Belle his own, Duncan tricked her into playing a game. When Belle emerged from the box, she found herself on a cruise ship. Belle soon realized that Duncan was trying to trap her. Angry, she locked herself in the bathroom until Duncan fell asleep, then finally emerged. Belle went alone to the deck, feeling the powerful force of the sea for the first time. In the restaurant, Belle was drawn to a woman named Martha with a peculiar hairstyle. Seeing her male companion, Belle openly asked, "Is this man your boyfriend?" Martha explained she hadn't had a partner for 20 years. Neither Martha nor her companion felt offended by Belle's bluntness. Instead, they admired her uniqueness. When Duncan arrived, Belle happily told him she had made a new friend and suggested they all have dinner together, but Duncan politely refused. In the end, Belle compromised. To keep control of Belle, Duncan immediately proposed to her, but Belle rejected him on the spot. She bluntly told him, "I'm already engaged to Max. I came out with you just for fun." Duncan left with a defeated expression. During their free time, Belle enjoyed spending time with Martha and Harry, reading books and discussing their ideas. Under Martha's influence, Belle's intellect developed rapidly. Neglected, Duncan kept trying to control Belle. He demanded that Belle, who was reading, return to their room. In his anger, Duncan snatched Belle's book and threw it into the sea, but Martha handed Belle a new one. Furious, Duncan rolled up his sleeves and threatened to throw Martha into the sea, but everyone just found Duncan's behavior ridiculous. When Martha knocked Duncan out, the farce came to a perfect end. Every time Belle visited a new place, she would write letters to Godwin. He was aware of Belle's situation but never intervened. One night, watching Duncan suffer more because of her, Belle suddenly realized how cruel she had become. She shared her thoughts with Harry, but Harry believed it was because Belle didn't understand the world yet. Harry took Belle to a slum, and from above, they looked down to see refugees and many dead bodies. Belle was deeply shocked by the sight, and in a panic, She ran down to try and help the refugees, but Harry stopped her forcefully, explaining that if they went down, they would surely be kidnapped and robbed. Back in the room, Belle was still upset by the refugees' suffering. At that moment, Duncan, drunk, saw a bed full of money. Belle collected all of it and planned to donate it to the refugees. However, 2 crew members stopped her, claiming they would help her deliver the money. Belle, naively, believed them. When Duncan woke up, he found all his money gone. Thinking he'd been robbed, he was surprised when Belle explained that she took it to give to the poor. Enraged, Duncan fainted on the spot. With no money, they were quickly kicked off the cruise ship. Duncan, angry, kept cursing Belle, but Belle wasn't upset. She thought that experiencing life as a poor person and working her way out of it was a valuable experience. Belle wanted to find a hotel to stay in but unexpectedly met an old madam. Learning that she could experience a different life and earn money, Belle eagerly accepted. Later, Belle happily brought pastries to Duncan, but when Duncan learned where they came from, he felt humiliated and angrily cursed Belle. In the end, he summarized, "You're hideous in my eyes." Belle calmly corrected him, saying, "Though your compliments are few, you've never stopped praising my beauty." Unable to explain himself, Duncan broke down. Belle asked him to explain what was wrong with her actions. Duncan didn't understand Belle's true mental state and angrily cursed her as low class. At that moment, Belle finally realized that Duncan wasn't the right person for her. Belle took out the emergency money Godwin had given her and planned to buy a ticket for Duncan to return home. However, Duncan grabbed all of Belle's money, leaving her standing there with nothing. Belle had no choice but to find the only person she knew, the old madam. But Belle didn't like the feeling of the girls lining up to be chosen by men. She protested to the madam, but the madam was sly. She took Belle to a room and showed her sickly granddaughter. The madam explained that some humiliation and fear were inevitable for survival. Kind and naive Belle was successfully brainwashed and began accepting all kinds of clients. During her free time, Belle would attend classes, continuing her exploration of the world. Deeply in love, Duncan found Belle again and demanded that she marry him. However, Belle coldly replied, "Go back home. It's over between us." Now, looking at you, I can only wonder how I ever fell for you. On the other side, Godwin suddenly collapsed. Max checked and discovered a tumor in his abdomen. After receiving Godwin's critical condition letter, Belle immediately rushed back. Upon seeing Belle return, Godwin was very happy. But Belle raised a question: had she ever had children? She noticed a cesarean scar on her stomach. Knowing his time was limited, Godwin told Belle the whole truth, and Belle was completely shocked by the revelation. Meanwhile, she discovered that Godwin had created another experimental subject, just like her, in their home. Unlike Belle, Godwin had no emotional attachment to this new subject. In the end, Belle forgave Godwin and decided to become a doctor. Belle told Max that she had sold her body before and asked if he minded. Max calmly replied, "It's your body. You have the right to use it as you wish." At Belle and Max's wedding, Godwin, having taken painkillers, attended the wedding and walked down the aisle with Belle like a father. However, an unexpected guest crashed the wedding. Belle's husband from her previous life. Ignoring the objections from Godwin and Max, Belle decisively left with the general. She wanted to know what she had gone through to feel so hopeless about the world. During dinner, Belle asked the general why she had jumped off the bridge. The general replied it was because Belle hated the child in her womb. Belle then asked why they had fallen for each other, and the general said, "Because we both like to have fun." He then demonstrated by having a servant bring soup, then ordering the dog to bark, scaring the servant and causing the hot soup to spill all over her. He laughed uncontrollably. Then, he pointed a gun at the servant and demanded she continue serving him cheese. Belle finally understood why she had become so desperate about life. Facing such a violent man, who wouldn't want to escape? Belle tried to leave, only to find the door had already been locked. On her return, Belle heard more terrifying news. After learning about Belle's past, the general, in a cruel attempt to control her, wanted to castrate her. After careful consideration, Belle decided to confront the general and told him the truth about her brain transplant. But the general didn't believe her. He pointed a gun at Belle, forced her to drink the alcohol in his hand, and ordered her to undergo the surgery. Belle suddenly splashed the alcohol at him and quickly grabbed the gun from his hand. But the gun went off accidentally, shooting the general in the foot. Belle took him to the clinic to treat his wound, but Max warned Belle that if the general survived, he wouldn't let it go. Belle didn't want to watch him bleed to death, so she came up with a clever idea. She brought Godwin's notebook and performed surgery on the general. As Godwin was dying, he told Belle, "In this life, everyone has looked at me with fear, Except for you. After giving Belle one last kiss, Godwin peacefully left this world. Belle inherited Godwin's clinic and lived happily with Max. Under Belle's management, the castle was orderly and peaceful.